Let me tell you, it has been pretty cold the last couple of days, but don't worry, we got a little warm up coming, and that's what we're going to be going over in this forecast and also going over the rain and snow chances going on for the rest of this week. Now, bringing this all the way to the zoomed out view here of the United States, you can see that we do have some cloud cover out there over the northern plains going into Iowa there, cloud cover happening there, also over here near Cheyenne. But what's going to cause this big warm up is this system that is currently just off of the screen that is rotating counterclockwise, bringing cold air on the backside, but it's going to be bringing that warm air all the way up into the United States. So, right now across the United States, it's pretty chilly, warming up a little bit in the southeast, though. Got some 60-degree temperatures returning today. But for most of the country right now, that is not the case. It's very cold out there for everyone, or pretty much average for this time of year, mainly because we had a huge dip in the jet stream that came through and brought that cold front all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. And pretty much what's going to change in comparison to that is that we're going to have a different kind of jet stream. So the jet stream is essentially a stream of mixing air that keeps, pretty much the cold air up here and then the warmer air on the bottom side because, up there in the northern part of the planet, we've got a bunch of ice. When the Earth gets cooler because it's tilted away from the sun, the cold air gets colder and that goes down in the south. And then the warm air, it tries to hang on. And sometimes the warm air and the cold air, neither one of them win. And so we get kind of a flat jet stream, which is what we're going to be getting here over the next week, which is going to bring a lot warmer temperatures across the United States. First off, what we're going to be doing here is talking about the precipitation, what you can expect over the next couple of days here. As you can see, up here in the northern plains going into the Pacific Northwest, got some rain and showers there, but for the most part, most of the country is pretty clear. Not a whole lot going on out there. But if we push this forward, you can see that the Pacific Northwest is going to get a low pressure system that's going to bring quite a bit of rain. There's a potential for flooding there as well, and some storms that could happen. I wouldn't be surprised if you got a couple of rumbles of thunder out there in the Pacific Northwest, and that's going into the 4th. This is at around 1 p.m. there. Let me go ahead and turn on this really quick just so we can have a bigger time at the top right there. Follow along if you want with the time there. But yeah, as we looking at the Pacific Northwest, you can see rain is definitely picking up there. And then another system comes in the next day at around the same time. So two quick little bursts of systems coming through, bringing rain for the lower elevations and snow to the higher elevations. But that's going to be pretty much it. These two little systems are going to be bringing that warm air up into the United States like we were talking about earlier, and a big warm up is going to come out here. And don't worry, we're going to be talking about that in just a little bit. But if you thought it was going to stay cold forever, it's definitely not. Let's go ahead and push this forward a little bit more here. You can see we have a little bit of a clipper system up here. This is one of those things that could shift around a little bit, so maybe some extra snow for northern Minnesota. Gonna miss the Great Lakes region up there, but that's pushing this all the way through. Maybe Maine could get another shot of snow over there on the northeast. But yeah, I mean, relatively calm, not a whole lot of rain really for anybody or snow. Maybe a little bit of snow in the UP of Michigan and Wisconsin. And then looking back over here to the northwest, I mean, definitely another system pushing in here with another round of rain and snow for the mountainous regions. But I mean, that's pretty much just going to be the pattern. That's why this heat is going to stick around and be as hot. In terms of heat, we're not talking about hot as in compared to summer. We're talking about hot as in compared to the averages, which we will go over as well before we go over the exact temperatures of the United States. But yeah, pushing this all the way out to day 5, maybe another clipper system. Again, these can go up a little bit more to the north or a little bit more to the south. So, might not see any snow at all, or you can see a little bit more, a little bit further south going into Minnesota and Wisconsin as we go into the 8th. Looking at the total snowfall expected across the nation here, you see the main regions that are going to be getting the snow is going to be the Pacific Northwest and the mountainous regions, not too much on the lower elevations. And then coming up here to the northern plains and the Great Lakes region, you can see we have this little band of snow here. And again, this is pretty conditional. Again, it could go a little bit to the north, could go a little bit to the south. But for the most part, if you do get snow, you could get a couple of inches, maybe even up to 5 inches in some areas. Also, over here in northern Wisconsin and over here in Maine, could pick up a dusting to 1 to 2 inches over there. And over here to the precipitation totals here, you can see that over here in the Pacific Northwest, we definitely going to be picking up some rain over here. Let's kind of zoom in and get a little bit more on the exact totals. I mean, this is a decent amount of rain over the next 5 days. 4, 5 inches possible. Also over here, 4 or 5 inches possible near Astoria, Aberdeen, around 3 to 4 inches. Just to the east of Seattle, a pretty big band here of 3 to 4, maybe even a couple isolated spots there of 5 inches as this storm rolls through. So make sure you are, weather aware just in case you get a flood warning. It shouldn't all fall at the same time. So, there shouldn't be too big of a flood threat over there. But just in case, you never know, could get a couple of training storms and that flood threat will increase up there. But yeah, for the most part, look at the rest of the country here. I mean, a lot of areas are going to struggle to pick up even over an inch here. Most areas under an inch. And unfortunately, where we're seeing the worst parts of the drought, just no rain in the forecast for the next 5 days. So that drought will get worse as we go into the future. Speaking of the drought, you can see that we just got a new drought monitor released here. And as you can see, it is still very dry across the country. And, Southeast has been building and building and building a drought. I personally live in Alabama. Everything's been dry out here. We got a little bit of a rain, I guess you could call it, but to me, it feels like more of a mist, and it didn't do anything. And in fact, the drought got worse on this latest update. We are now in an extreme drought here for parts of northern Alabama. And as you go down further to the south and east, I mean, look at all of this drought across the country. I mean, we got some very serious drought down there in Louisiana, going into Mississippi, going into Texas there, those darker reds. And then, Texas, though, actually got some drought relief with this last storm that came through, dropped a decent amount of rain. Also, some pretty decent drought over here near New Mexico and Arizona, and some drought up there in the Pacific Northwest. But I do think at least we're going to get some drought relief up here with those training storms that are going to be coming through. So that's good news. But for everywhere else, most likely the drought's going to get worse. So even though you just got some relief here, probably going to see those drought numbers start to pick back up again. And then also over here in Hawaii, the drought's getting worse. It looks like Alaska is still escaping from any droughts, pretty much. Little tiny area there in the yellow with drought. So moving on to the temperature anomalies for the next couple of days here, you can see that we do already have some above average temperatures across the west and the northwest, and then that's going to move off to the east here, and you're going to see as those systems start to push across the United States, it's going to bring that anomalous temperatures. Look at that. We're talking, 15 to 20 degrees above average is going to be entering into parts of Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota there. So a big warm up is on the way. This isn't like, again, we're not going to see 100-degree temperatures. This is just above what is expected. But freeze framed on here, you can see that most of the United States is going to be getting those anomalously warm temperatures. So probably going to be putting those jackets back into the closet as this starts to move through. Pushing this even further, that's going to eventually expand, push off to the east, and then we're going to start to see those really anomalously hot temperatures move into the Ohio Valley, and then also into the northeast, even entering into Pennsylvania, into West Virginia. This is a little bit more uncertain because now we're pushing almost 4 days out, so it could shift around a little bit. But yeah, I mean, look at that. Most of the country is going to be above average, and that's because of that flat jet stream that we're going to get. That's going to really keep that cold air up to our north and the warm air down to the south. All right, now coming to the actual temperatures here, you can see it's going to warm up a little bit as we get into the peak heating hours, potentially 60s, maybe even some 70s over here in the southern plains there in the southeast, going to be getting up into the 60s, and along the coast going into Florida, going to be pulling up into the 80s there in southern Florida, but it's still staying pretty cool up there in the northeast, and also still staying pretty cool up there in the Pacific Northwest. Down here in the southwest, definitely still pretty toasty out there, but pushing this into the next day here, you can see that warm up continues even further. We got 60s pushing up and 70s pushing up all the way up into Oklahoma, Arkansas. Those 60s and 70s are really starting to intrude into Mississippi and Alabama in the southeast there, still staying cool pretty much on the northern half of the country. Pushing this through to the next day, you can really see how that warm air pushes out up over into like the northern plains here, the central plains, also in the southern plains. Starting to see those 80s start to creep back into Texas and Louisiana, maybe even a little bit into southern Mississippi there. And then pushing this even further, we're about to see potentially 90-degree temperatures pick back up here on the 6th, 2 p.m. there, definitely starting to get a little bit hotter down there in Texas. Those could eventually make its way into Oklahoma. Let's push this forward even further here. But yeah, look at that widespread heat extending all the way from South Dakota, going into Oklahoma and Texas, and then also Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama could potentially get a taste of those 80s as we go into the 7th, and then pushing this all the way to the end on day 5 here on the 8th. I mean, we're got 80s really widespread here, going all the way from Texas into Tennessee, Mississippi, nosing into Alabama and Georgia, maybe even the southeast could also, like over there near North and South Carolina, could get in on those 70s and 80s as well. Still pretty cool up here in the Pacific Northwest, cooling down on the West Coast as well, and then still pretty cool up here in the Northeast. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.